It's the Right Word Awakened, an invigorating engagement of words, spirit, mind, and self. With word stylist Emily, you can call her E. Claudette Freeman. Reimagine your words, rewrite your power, recreate your life, renew your story, right here on the Right Word Awakened podcast. It's all part of the Right Word Awakened movement, an Emily Claudette Freeman vibe.
Well, you heard the lady. This is, in fact, the Right Word Awakened podcast, and I am E. Claudette Freeman. We have a very interesting show today, and we are going to talk about something that is a buzzword and has been a buzzword for several years now. But beyond being a buzzword, I think it is an amazing and a very unique way to figure out just who you are and then take that understanding and develop and create the life around you that's really based on who you are. And that is branding. Branding. I was talking to our guest before the show and explaining that my concept for this show is that if we look at the tenets and the concepts and the ideas of branding in our personal lives, if we really figure out how the principles of branding can apply to who we are as just everyday people living our lives, whether we're business owners or ministry leaders or corporate leaders or any of that, we can absolutely approach how we live life and how we make decisions and approach opportunities in life a lot different. And that is based on a discovery session I did a couple of years ago with our guest today. And our guest today is Patricia Laurenceaua. She is the CEO and creative brand designer of Rebrand to Profit, and much of her success is attributed to having an eye for detail combined with an uncompromising acumen for excellence. Based in Miami, Florida, her design studio is a full-service multimedia design and brand development company that specializes in several fields, but definitely web development and brand development. Their niche is to create solutions that combine creative elements plus rational business ideas. And she is also the host of the Kickstart podcast, and she's going to definitely tell us more about that. But good morning and welcome, Patricia. How are you today?
I am good. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast today.
Listen, so first of all, before I get all, or at least I try to get all deep and profound, give us a little bit of a definition of just what branding is.
In the most simplest form, branding basically is what others say about you when you leave out of the room. It's the impression that you make, whether it's personal brand that you're developing or a business brand that you're developing, is what others, their perception of you when you walk out of the room. So in that, a lot of times people think that, a brand is basically, your logo or images that you create. It's more to it than that. It's more of the personality. And believe it or not, businesses have a personality. It has a tone. It has, a concept behind it. And it's the same thing with your personal brand. It has its own personality, and people gravitate towards that. That's why some brands are attracted to a certain group of individuals while others are not, because it's a personality that you're attracted to. So in the most simplest form, a brand is what others say about you when you leave out of the room.
Now, you mentioned personal brand and business brands. What's the key difference between the two?
Well, the key component and what kind of differentiates the two of them is that when you're building a business brand, let's start there with a business brand, it's usually around a product or a service. So you're developing based on a product or service which actually solves a solution for your potential customers. When you're developing a personal brand, it's different in a sense that your brand is developed around who you actually are. not who others have identified you to be, but the image and the persona that you want to present to the world as who you are authentically, and how you can best show that to the world on a whole different level. So that's where it kind of differentiates the two. With branding becoming this new buzzword everyone is talking about, they try to marry the two, but it is distinctly different. And when it's looked upon as your personal brand being that thing that really identifies who you are, because a lot of times we look at our personal brand and kind of identify ourselves based on what others say about us. But in actuality, it's who we really are, and it takes some time to really discover that and really dig deep and kind of turn off the voices in our head that, we keep replaying over and over in terms of developing that personal brand as far as who we really are authentically.
Now, Pat, so you work with clients on both ends, correct? Personal branding and business branding.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So you mentioned that whole dig deep. You said dig deep, and, I wrote that down because that immediately jumped out at me. So when we're looking at personal branding and doing some research, when I like one of the things that entrepreneur.com said about branding. It said your brand is your promise to your customer. Mm-hmm. And I highlighted that because it says to me that if I look at the customer and my whole personal branding package as me first, mm-hmm. then I have to ask myself, what is my promise to me as my brand? Because I become, if I am not my most vital customer, then everything else is and everyone else then is not in its proper place.
Absolutely.
So
absolutely.
when you think about doing dig deep with some of your clients, what are some of the things that you approach them about? Or just give us an example of what they need to potentially think about when it comes to digging deep.
Absolutely. A lot of times I'll have a client that'll come to me in regards to developing their personal brand. And basically they have all of these ideas and all of these concepts and all of these things that they want to kind of put together. And,
yeah, that sounds like somebody I know.
And that's fine, because I work, and it's funny because I work with a lot of creatives, and so the ideas are always coming. So now the thing is let's make sense of it. Which one resonates with you the most? Because everything doesn't have to be done now. Which is most important, and which actually solves a problem for your specific target audience. And I say that when you look at it that way, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in relation to business. It can just be in relation to, again, developing that personal brand. So when you look at it from that point, you're here for a purpose. You're here for an assignment. And a lot of times what happens is that we're not clear in terms of what our purpose is. What is it that we're to pursue? And I give the example early on, before I even got into this, I actually fell into the whole branding, graphic design, web development field because my initial idea was to go to law school. And I was like, in my family, we grew up where the culture was, you're either going to go to school to be an attorney, a doctor, or an accountant. That was it. I loved math, but I wasn't crazy about doing numbers. Definitely was not going into the medical field. So for me, I was like, okay, the legal field I can kind of work with. So I was pursuing that based on what the idea and traditionally was accepted in my family, not realizing that that was not my true purpose. And so in pursuit of that, I realized that's not really who I am. I'm more creative, whereas I thought I was more analytical. I'm more of a creative person, but that gift was never really developed. And it wasn't until I actually fell into the whole graphic design and brand development, and it was me searching out my true purpose that I had to really dig deep and find out, why am I here? What is my purpose for being here? And after working with clients, and I ask them, when they come to me with a business idea or they want to, go to another level in their professional career, the first question I ask is why? Why? It can't just be about I want more money. There has to be an innate reason. Why do you want to move to that next level? Let's start there, because in starting with the why, then you begin to understand and to figure out what your true purpose is. I developed this thing called Unlock the Brand Within, which is my latest signature program. And basically it walks a client through the five P's, I call it, of unlocking the authentic brand that lies within every one of us. And figuring out.
I want to talk about that, Pat. But let's take a quick break first, and then when we come back from the break, I want to go back and kind of touch into your statement that you kind of fell into graphic design and branding. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back on the Right Word Awaken podcast.
Are you married? Do you and your husband both have term life insurance? If you both don't, you should. You have a lot to protect. Call now, get a free quote for your husband, and while you're at it, get a quote for yourself too, because you both need term life insurance. Call now, 800-915-9542, 800-915-9542, 800-915-9542. Rates are at all-time lows. We'll shop over 30 top-rated companies to get you the best possible rates. Term life insurance, it's the perfect way to protect the quality of your family's lifestyle. You and your husband both need term life insurance, so call now for a free quote for the both of you. 800-915-9542, 800-915-9542, 800-915-9542.
Now back to the show to employ reimagined words and stories in the strategic plotting of your life journey. The Right Word Awakened.
Heading into the break, I said I wanted to take a step back before we get to the five items that you mentioned, but I want to touch a little bit on, Pat, your statement that you fell into graphic design and branding in realizing that law wasn't for you. And there's something in that process where you realize, okay, this isn't me, but then you say, then what is? So tell me a little bit about how you went from law school to falling into your purpose. Because I think that's where so many of us get lost in our whole personal brand. We figure out this isn't us, but we have no clue how to get from the this isn't us to what is us, to that thing that is sitting, that you called authentic, that very thing, that very gift, that very purpose that's just kind of sitting there going, anytime now, can you look this way? Anytime now. So tell us about that for you.
Sure. And I can tell you in the most simplest way, I had a mentor say to me, years ago, that engagement, as you engage in things, clarity comes. The more you engage, the more clarity comes. So when you're not sure as to where you are or the direction that you need to go in, you need to engage more. And for me, I had to learn not to be afraid to fail, not to be afraid and get stuck. Because a lot of times what happens is, and I could have very well got to a place in my pursuit for a law degree to say, you know what, just get stuck in that position because I didn't know what else to try. Or I was afraid to try other stuff and see what happened. I wasn't clear in terms of, what my next move was going to be, but I was willing and open to say, you know what, let me just try this and see where it goes. Let me just try this. Everyone at the time knew that I was always trying different types of businesses to kind of finally find out what it was that I wanted to do. And I specifically remember the shifting and the changing point for me came when I started a gift basket business. And again, I always knew that I wanted to be in business, but it just wasn't clear in terms of what exactly I was going to be doing. And when I started the gift basket business, and I realized it now, that my purpose, even for being in that, was to teach me the importance of paying attention to detail, which now I apply to everything that I do now. And the intricacies in putting the baskets together and finding specific products and to put in there and packaging and just paying attention to those small little details and creating something that your customer actually loved and being on top of, pricing and things of that nature. I take all of that and begin to apply it in my business now. But even in that, I remember I had gotten to a point in the business where I needed to create marketing materials. But I knew what I wanted, but I couldn't quite articulate it. And I would ask for certain, designs for my business cards or flyers, but it just wasn't coming out the way that I wanted it to. So I decided, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and take a class. I literally took one class at Miami-Dade in Photoshop, and that changed the landscape of everything for me. That's what opened up my creative juices from there. I started creating the marketing materials I wanted to see, paying attention to those small little details, and people started asking me to do their stuff, and that's how I fell into it. I really just did it to create the stuff for myself. At the time, it was a tight budget for marketing, so I was like, if I can just handle this on my own, then I wouldn't have to pay a graphic designer, explain to them what I want, and hope that I get the results that I'm looking for. I'll just do it myself. And that's how I actually fell into it. But it requires, for anyone, you got to try stuff, and you have to be open to seeing where it goes. You're not going to know immediately, okay, this is what I'm supposed to do, take it and run with it. No, you have to try. It may not work, but it gets you closer to where it is that you need to be. And that was the process for me.
Okay. So in looking at our brand as what do we bring to this life? What is our purpose, and how do we walk into that purpose? One of the things that I heard you say is, one, you have to be willing to fail.
Yes.
And two, you have to be willing to try different things, even if it means doing the different things yourself.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. Because one of the things, too, I learned in the process is that there were certain things about it, even with the gift baskets, I really didn't want to do. The creative side of me opened up, but in terms of shopping for the products and putting stuff together, and I had gotten to a point where I didn't want to do it anymore. And I wanted to find a different avenue where I could still use my creative skills, but in a different way, and be able to do something more meaningful. Not that gift baskets, is not a meaningful type of business, but for me, it's something greater, and I was still in pursuit of that.
Okay. So tell us about these 5 things that you mentioned.
Well, in Unlock the Brand Within, one of the things, and the main reason why I created it was because I would have clients that come to me to develop their business brand, but their personal life is a hot mess. And one thing about it is that if your personal life, if your finances aren't in order, if your organizational skills are off, time management is completely crazy, you're late for everything, it affects how you handle your business. You can't have a successful business and your personal life is not in order, because it does affect it, and it's parallel to one another. So one of the things that I started to do is working on clients and helping them get those things in order. I understand that you want to start the business, but there's some things on the personal side that you got to get it together, so that way you have a foundation laid. So now you can start applying what you already do at home and in your personal life, and start applying those things to your business. And the 5 key areas that I really work with them on, the first thing is position, understanding and knowing your position. The second thing is your posture. The third thing is potential. The fourth is your process. And the fifth is your power. Those are the 5 P's that I help clients unlock your authentic brand. And that is in developing your personal brand. Knowing your position, your posture, your potential, your process, and your power.
Wow. That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
But when you understand that.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
But when you understand those 5 P's, it brings clarity to where you're going. And you're not all over the place. You're not trying to, I'm going to do this. You have a better grasp and a better understanding as far as where you're going and what is it that you're trying to accomplish. What is the end goal? And it just makes it much more clearer. And now you can decipher in terms of things that you need to be involved in and things that, it's not in alignment with where I'm going.
Wow.
Yes.
And there's the thing right there. How the branding and understanding the position, the posture, the potential, the process, and the power helps you determine those 2 things that you just said. So let's take another quick break, Pat, and we're going to come back, and I'm just going to let you just work that out for me, okay?
Sure.
We'll be right back.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4811. 800-978-4811. 800-978-4811. That's 800-978-4811.
Now back to the show to employ reimagined words and stories in the strategic plotting of your life journey. The Right Word Awakened.
Before the break, Pat, I said that the 2 things that you mentioned going into the break, I really want you to take just a minute and expound on those 2 things, because I know that if we get those 2 things right in the development and the maturing of who we are as individuals, it could be absolutely powerful. So please expound on those for me.
Sure. When I work with clients, even in regards to the 5 P's, one of the things that you have to understand is being honest and real with you, because you have to be able to do the same thing in your business. A lot of times I remember, early on in just thinking about, I want to be a business owner. And I had this grandiose idea in terms of what that looked like. Me driving the sports car, the perfect size 6, wearing the suit and on the phone with my assistant. Everything is being handled in my office, and I'm pulling up, and, my staff is waiting on me, ready for that meeting, and, monies are coming in. And here's the reality. It doesn't work that way. It's a lot of grunt work. And the thing is really being honest and saying, you know what, where I'm at, your position, it's a hot mess. When we understand the definition of position is where someone is, where are you located right now, the reality of where you are. And not, with social media today, we post pictures of us traveling, or we post pictures of us at networking events and doing this, doing that, putting off an image as if we're much further than where we actually are. But when we really deal with unlocking our true, authentic brand, we learn to be honest with ourselves in terms of where we really are. Where are you in position right now? And being honest with that. Because when you know where you are for real, that my finances are a mess, credit is shot, I don't know all that I need to know. Now we can begin to work on where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, and begin to pull the pieces together that are necessary to actually help you get to that next level. And so that's where, for me, in dealing with these 5 Ps, even in regards to posture, understanding your posture and how, because there is a distinct difference between position and posture. And a lot of people try to intertwine the two. But your posture, to me, when I look at it, it's more of where you are spiritually, where you position. Your position in the natural is where you are physically, and then your posture is where you are positioned. Are you broken? Is there unresolved issues that still need to be dealt with, that unforgiveness, that brokenness? Because those things start to play in your head, and it affects your business. Because when you have the potential to make millions, but don't realize that you have that because of that record that keeps playing in your head that you'll never amount to anything, it affects your business.
Wow.
Yes.
It affects your business and it affects your life, because you'll never do more than just enough. And because something in you says, okay, let me just at least get to the point where I typically fail, and then I'll get there and stop.
That's it.
And that could be in relationships. That could be, like you said, in business. That can even be, if I'm following you correctly, Pat, in your spiritual development and in every area of your life. That you go around a mountain to a certain point, and then once you get to, the left side on the north side of the mountain, that's where things tend to get a little rocky. And so you say to yourself, since I know it gets rocky here, rather than saying, let me take a different posture, let me reposition and get through the rocky road this time,
exactly.
We often just decide to stay right there on that place on the mountain, or we turn around and go back.
And you have to understand your patterns. For me, I remember very early on when I was pursuing to go to law school, and I was the type where if I was working somewhere and I didn't like it, I would quit. And it was easy for me to find another job, so I didn't even think anything of it. I didn't like them. They talked to me the wrong way. They disrespected. I'm out of here. And what happened for me was I developed a pattern where I didn't commit and stick with anything long enough to see the blessing on the other side, because it didn't work the way that I expected it to work. And I had to learn the hard way that when I was in a position, because it was very easy for me to throw in the towel and say, you know what, forget this. But what happens is, if there isn't consistency, and if you're not committed to anything, you're ready to take flight at any opportunity that's presented for you that seems hard, then guess what? You never will reach the full potential of the intention of what it is that you're pursuing. So for me, it got to a point where, regardless to how difficult it got, I had to stick with that thing and work through it and change that pattern. But it required me being honest with myself and saying, you know what? I give up too quickly. I'm not committed. I'm always getting ready to quit and move on to the next thing. And I had to be real with myself in regards to that, because I would take the same pattern into my business the same way.
That's funny. But I think you make a very good point. We don't often realize that the very same pattern we do in one area, we take that exact pattern into everything else. And we never want to sit still and, as you said, dig deep to look for the patterns, to look at our positioning, and to really take to make some branding decisions, and to look at our life as a brand, and really ask ourselves, what is our brand? What are we doing with this brand that will have any kind of impact on people, and what kind of impact are we already having, and that type of thing. So, Pat, we're almost out of time for this episode. We're going to do a part 2 of this show, because there's so much more that I want to ask you about, and that I know that you can teach us. But before we do that, for this episode, give us a word of advice, something that you would encourage people looking at their life now as a brand, as their personal brand, their most serious and real personal brand, what would you say to them today?
Be totally honest with you, totally honest with where you are, totally honest in terms of your actual position. Got to be honest with you. Got to be honest and acknowledging where you are, acknowledging, maybe some of the poor decisions that you made based on the poor information that you had. We only make poor decisions because we don't have proper information. It's not that you wanted to make a bad decision, but you didn't have the right information to make the correct decision. So just being totally honest with where you are right now.
And tell us where people can connect with you online, and tell us a little bit about the Kickstart podcast.
They can connect with me online on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, on Rebrand the number 2 Profit on all social media platforms. They can find me there. Kickstart Your Brand podcast is at kickstartpodcast.com. And basically that podcast I started to give tips and information in regards to brand development, business, just to give you the kickstart that you need, the instructions that you need, the strategies that you need in order to kickstart both your personal and your business brand so you can live a life that you intend to live and that you want to live, but just don't know how to do it.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Pat, for joining us on the Right Word Awaken podcast. And if you missed what she said, you can find her website, rebrandtoprofit.com, and all of her social media connects, and a link to the podcast and everything is right there. But we are definitely going to have Patricia come back and do a part 2 with us, because I have more questions, and I'm sure you have more questions too. But I always like to end the show, as you know, with an affirmation and an intention and your move based on what we've discussed. So the affirmation this time is, my brand promise to me is to be me authentically, consistently, and purposely for great impact in my life first. My brand promise to me is to be me authentically, consistently, and purposely for great impact in my life first. And our intention is, I intend to consciously find and live out my brand, my purpose, my muse, my me, and represent the value in me that is divinely instilled. And for your move, I taking the words right from Pat's mouth, dig deep. Dig deep, and at least this time around, ask yourself these 2 questions and answer them very honestly, as Pat said. What is your position and what is your posture? Dig deep and ask, what is your position and what is your posture? We'll talk to you next time on The Right Word Awakened. I am Claudette Freeman.
You've been listening to The Right Word Awakened, an invigorating engagement of words, spirit, mind, and self with word stylist Emily. You can call her Claudette Freeman. Want more information? Visit www.eclaudetteliterary.com. For sponsor, guest, and other show information, email rightwordawakened@eclaudetteliterary.com. Until next time, tell your words to wake up.